is going to talk about Botometer, which Phil mentioned before is a sort of an open source tool. And also there's like a website page you can go to that helps you estimate for Twitter accounts, the likelihood that they might be an automated account. And then Chris is going to talk about Hoaxy, which is one of the oldest tools that we've had at the observatory. It was made before I was even here, and it's really a powerful visualization tool. It looks at lots of different things related to the spread of information on Twitter. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about CoVaxxy, but for those of you who don't know what CoVaxxy is, so CoVaxxy is kind of like a general project, and essentially what there's a tool that I'm going to be showing you, but it has this sort of larger framework, which is trying to look at kind of the intersection of social media misinformation and sort of vaccine discussions online, specifically related to COVID-19. So we were, as COVID-19 sort of took over the world, we wanted to try to focus our skills that we have here at the observatory to try to understand this relationship. And there's kind of like three different sort of areas, I guess, we could talk about with respect to the project. So there's the data collection aspect, which is probably maybe the least exciting, but it sort of allows us to do everything else that we're doing. So we're essentially collecting, when we have been for over a year, about a year and a half now almost, any tweet that mentions something related to vaccines, vaccinations, COVID-19. So in this way, we can sort of gather all this data about, online discussion about vaccinations related to COVID-19. And with all that data, we wanted to do some research, which is obviously a big focus of what we do at the lab. But then also we like to build tools. So we created this a website called CoVaxxy, which is sort of allows people to visualize that data as well as other things related to vaccine adoption. And I'll be talking about all of this today, hopefully, and not too long. I'm going to start with the dashboard, just sort of go through that website, and then I'm going to talk about, from a very high level perspective, some research that I got accepted recently that's looking at sort of the relationship between misinformation and vaccine hesitancy. And then I'll talk about the data so that you guys can, sort of point you in the right direction if you're interested in making use of that data. So I'm going to now just sort of exit full screen and go to the dashboard. You can visit this website here. I'm pretty sure you can just Google CoVaxxy, it should come up as well. And right, so this is the website. Anybody can visit it. And just as a point of reference in the future, or if you want to look at this now, if you want to try to get some, so we have a data set paper that sort of details exactly how we gather everything. If you want to look at that, you can click this About the Project button here. It opens a little repo on GitHub, and there's all the information that you might want is there if you want to dig into that. And then the rest of the website here is just a collection of visualizations of different things. We try to keep it pretty clean, but again, we have all the details. So for all these graphs, we have this little pop-down button. If you want to sort of understand how we're making it or the data that's going into it, you can find that there. The first visualization is sort of this side-by-side geographical representation of, on the left, we have this Twitter discussion map. So this is everything, all the data here is coming from our tweet collection. And then on the right, we have what we're calling the vaccine adoption map. And all of this data is coming from CDC data or government statistics that we've sort of pulled together separately. And you can sort of zoom in and mess around with this. The default here is the percentage of tweets, that include low credibility sources. So we find users based off of their self-report location in their account, and we place them into states. And then we're looking at sort of the percentage of tweets that are being shared by all those users who've located themselves on Twitter. And then we have different things like the percentage of people who are unvaccinated, people who've received 1 dose, 2 doses, all these different statistics that you can sort of play with and things like that. Me personally, I'm not the side-by-side graph thing or map can be kind of difficult. So we put this information into a sort of a different representation here. So basically all the drop downs that we see from these two maps, we can sort of, they tie directly to this scatter plot here. So instead of the Twitter discussion map, we have the x-axis essentially, and we can sort of select the same different drop downs here. And as we update the, is my computer freezing right now? Yeah, here we go. Now it's responding. But so as we play with the different drop downs, we can see that the axes change, and then the dots here, which represent the states, will obviously update. The interesting thing, so this is representative of sort of like the average measure for the whole data set that we have. But what you can do with this plot, which I think is kind of cool, is you can highlight each one of these dots. So if we want to look at Texas, we can look at the axes that we've selected over time, right? So we have the low credibility percentage here on the x-axis. And we have for Texas that statistic is sort of shown over time here. And then the same thing, we have the total number of people who have gotten one dose, and that shows that that number over time here as well. So there's a lot that you can play with here. It's pretty interactive if you want to look at these little dots and you can figure out who they are. You can sort of zoom in, and it's hopefully relatively straightforward to play around with. If we look at the next visualization we have, this is just looking at straight Twitter data. So this is basically how hashtags are used over time. The y-axis is the percentage of, so it shows for a hashtag the percentage of tweets that contain that hashtag relative to all hashtags shared on that day. And this is kind of fun. We can sort of search for different things, so it works pretty seamlessly. So one hashtag is Great Reset, which is like a sort of conspiracy theory thing about the whole world being reset, and that's why all the politicians are trying to get us to take vaccines and all this stuff. So this can be kind of fun to play with. It's also really interactive, like the rest of the plots, and something to play with if you're interested. The next visualization is looking at just the sort of CDC data and vaccine adoption data. So the lines represent different states, and then we have essentially this drop down here, which represents any of the sort of the drop downs that we've seen previously, and that messes with the y-axis here. So we can play with these in whatever way we want, and then we can search for different states and add them into or remove them from this figure as well. In the next plot here, we have, so this is showing the low credibility and mainstream sources. So we're tracking a subset of sources in our data set. So we have low credibility, the list, sort of like Phil had mentioned, we have fact checkers that sort of find these low credibility sources, and then we have mainstream sources as well. And this is the same thing. We sort of see how they're shared over time. One that we've seen that's low credibility that's been getting a lot of traction is Children's Health Defense Fund, which is run by Robert Kennedy Jr., who was named as one of the disinformation dozen, I think maybe last year. And we can see that in comparison to, for example, the New York Times. And we can see the sort of, the coverage that they're getting within the vaccine conversation online is pretty substantial. And then the final visualization is sort of showing for the last week, sort of like this leaderboard of who's been sharing the most misinformation, what domains and sources have been shared the most within the last week. We can see Children's Health Defense up top. It's been number one many times actually over the past year. We've seen, and it's definitely having a bit of an impact in a negative way. But that's all the visualizations for CoVaxxy. So I'll hop back to the presentation and keep going. So again, as I was saying before, we have this idea of the kind of questions and things that we're interested in looking at this intersection of online misinformation and vaccine adoption. So building this tool was supposed to be a way for us to sort of, play with the data and make that, some possible for people to play with publicly, and try to help figure out sort of like what are interesting things to look at and what are, interesting questions to ask. So this led to this project where we're looking at sort of the intersection between misinformation and vaccine hesitancy, right? So we're trying to figure out if there's any kind of relationship between these two things. And I'm going to go very broadly over these results, but feel free to ask me any questions later. The general idea was to combine a bunch of different data sets. So we started with our Twitter collection, and then we added sort of the CDC data that has vaccine adoption data that was reported, as the pandemic was taking place. And then we also included Facebook survey data. So Facebook was working with Carnegie Mellon to have people take surveys on Facebook, and one of the questions in there was looking at essentially like if you were given or would you be willing to take a vaccine today if it was provided to you? So that was a measure of vaccine hesitancy that we can look at. So we can look at sort of physical vaccine adoption, people actually getting vaccinated, and people who are maybe don't have access, but also are saying that they wouldn't get it anyway. And one of the major benefits of the Facebook data was that we can see that level of granularity at the county level, whereas the vaccine adoption level was only at the state level. So the first thing we looked at was this state level vaccine adoption. So, and the major takeaway here is that we found that misinformation negatively correlated with vaccinations on the ground. So I'll just explain the figure. The dots are representative of the states. We color them based off of their political leaning, based on the 2020 election. And we see on the y-axis the daily vaccinations per 1 million in the population. And then on the x-axis, we have the percentage of online misinformation being shared in that state. So we can see as essentially as more misinformation, as there's more misinformation in a state, we see that less people are getting vaccinated. And we control for sort of all of the major covariates here. So we include race, age, politics, poverty, virality, and this correlation here is still significant. So we see this at the state level with respect to actually people physically getting vaccinated, but we also can look at sort of vaccine hesitancy to look at this from a different way, and we find sort of the reverse relationship, which converges on kind of the same idea. So instead of finding a negative correlation, we find a positive correlation because we're now looking at vaccine hesitancy. So if we have more people in a state who are vaccine hesitant, that means less people are getting vaccinated. So the takeaway here is that if there's more misinformation in a state, the percentage of people in that state who are going to get who are hesitant to get vaccinated is increasing. And we again control for all of those covariates I mentioned before, and this relationship is still significant. It's a small correlation, but there is an effect there. And then, as I mentioned before, we have the vaccine hesitancy data, which allows us to look at things at the county level. So we do a similar correlation, and we find that misinformation is positively correlated with vaccine hesitancy. So the axes here are the same, but the dots now are representative counties as opposed to states. And essentially, we see kind of this interesting, what appears to be sort of a maybe like a ceiling effect here, where there's sort of lack of increase for Republican counties, but when there's no misinformation, essentially we see that kind of this well-known sort of political difference between Democratic and Republican counties, where Republicans are a little bit more hesitant to get vaccinated. But as the misinformation in those counties increases, we see that they become the sort of gap between these different types of counties with respect to vaccine hesitancy goes away. So they sort of converge towards being more vaccine hesitant. And again, all of these, we're controlling for all the same factors as I mentioned before. So that's all I'm going to say about the paper. I can share that with you if you guys are interested. But just for time, I'm going to sort of talk about the data a little bit. Essentially, so this is the Twitter collection I mentioned. This is a real-time data collection. So we have we can work with the Twitter API to sort of tell them, hey, here's a list of keywords, anything that contains these, list of keywords, anything related to vaccines, COVID-19. We have a whole list of words that we sort of did a snowball sampling to find. And anything that contains any of these words of relevancy, just sort of give us all those tweets. As of yesterday, I checked, we have over 330 million tweets in this collection. And in order to guarantee that we don't have any sort of gaps in this data, what we do is we have two different virtual machines running in two different physical locations. So if, for example, one of them was to go down for like a power outage or something like that, then we have another machine running the same query, collecting the same data set, and it serves as a sort of like immediate backup. We started this collection on January 4th, and it's been running ever since. And we upload all the tweet IDs to Zenodo every single day. So if you wanted to use this data, you can download those tweet IDs and then use the Twitter API to hydrate. There's some pretty friendly tools if you're not super comfortable using the API, and that would be one way to make use of this data. And I will pause here, I guess, for questions. So that's all I've got to go through today. Should I maybe stop sharing? I guess.
Thank you, Matt.
Of course.
Great presentation and very, very interesting tool and amazing data capacity that you have been building there. Any questions for Matt?
Hi, that was great to see this. Thank you so much for sharing this. I was wondering in regards to the correlations you're looking at between vaccine hesitancy and misinformation. Are there any other questions similar to that that you're wanting to look into or that you're starting to work on right now?
That's a good question. I think we had a little bit of trouble just with the paper being in limbo. So that was looking at those different kinds of questions has been kind of on pause for a little while. I don't know, Kaicheng, do you have anything in mind that you're thinking of looking at? I don't have any specific questions right now that I've been thinking about. I've been working on some other projects, but I think the lead author on that paper, Francesco Pieri, who's not here right now, may have a better answer for you. So yeah, I don't think that I have any great answers for you there. Sorry.
I can maybe add a little bit to this. I think first of all, it's a really important question, which is that how online misinformation really change people's perception and then change people's behavior and then leads to bad outcomes, right? I think that's a really important question. And I don't think there's a lot of evidence showing this. There's a clear causal link between. And here with this CoVaxxy project, we are trying to look into that, but however, you can see we can only show you correlation, right? It's really hard to tease out the real causality there. So we are trying to do more, but it's really hard. So one thing I've been trying to look into is not on the vaccine, but on the unproven drugs. For example, there was something called hydroxychloroquine, which was mentioned, and ivermectin, of course, that were mentioned a lot on social media. Some people believe it's a treatment, it's a cure, a magical cure for COVID-19, but more evidence show that, which I believe is that it doesn't have a positive effect for COVID-19 at least, and also those drugs have side effects. So we're trying to see if we can find some medical records and to see if people are really getting those drugs and to see if there are actually bad outcomes along the way. We're still working on that, so not much to share today, but that's one direction that we believe might give us some answer to the question of the causality. And also, you know, once we find this, if there's a correlation or causality, we can also look into like what kind of people are more vulnerable to those kind of misinformation and what kind of people are more likely to be, to change their behavior and to adopt those drugs. So yeah, still work in progress, and I'm not even sure if we can get anything out, but yeah, hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Angus, I think you got your hand raised, please.
Yeah. Thanks very much for a very interesting presentation, and even more so for an interesting tool for the community to dive into. I'm wondering if you have a sense, if you've from either this project or some of the previous work, the extent to which it is there's going to be variance in the extent to which a tweet is picked up and retweeted, the extent to which it hijacks attention or influences behavior. So a lot of the analyses you were presenting was sort of overall relationships between this kind of information, that kind of information. But it seems like that variance in itself might be quite informative. What kind of information is more likely? Is this just chance? Something dropped on a particular day and got, caught in a particular vortex of information, or is there, because the kinds of bot networks that were described in the last the previous presentation, those are going to produce something that is that comes out at the end of that at sort of a uniform level of having been acknowledged and liked by a certain number of bots and so forth. But then as it enters the ecosystem, its variance is going to occur. And that might tell us something about the actual preferences and cognitive processes of the actors that are going on. So there would be some tools that had the greatest penetration, some tweets that had the greatest penetration, some tweets that had the least penetration. Is it possible to do those kinds of analyses, or is that something that you guys had in mind?
Yeah, it's a great question. You're right. We've certainly been looking at things from more of like a high level perspective, but those kinds of questions are really interesting. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but your question is making me think of some work that's been coming out of MIT by David Rand and Gordon Pennycook, which are looking, they're trying to get at sort of these kinds of psychological mechanisms that might be at play. And I think one of the things that they've been kind of honing in on is people who are less, I forget the term now, but I think it's essentially people who are blanking on the term. People who like maybe don't take as much time to think about what it is that they're reading or sharing. So essentially, if you're sort of just going through, seeing something, retweeting quickly, like that's kind of how misinformation might be spread a little bit faster. So those kinds of people who are thinking less deeply about the information that they're reading or sharing. So that's one thing that comes to mind. Something else that's really important, and this is another project that I'm working on with Kevin, and a separate project with me and some other folks, that we see is that a lot of the misinformation related to COVID is really being sort of introduced also by really prominent verified users. So we don't have these papers out yet. This is a really fresh work, but in our preliminary results, what we're seeing is that the vast majority, or I should say maybe like a disproportionate size of misinformation is being created by people who are verified by Twitter, and they have like millions of followers. They're politicians that TV personalities that and what there sort of appears to be is a sort of a problematic social problem where these people have become really, really popular and famous. And because of that, if Twitter is to take action against them by, for example, suspending them or doing something to their account to sort of limit that influence, then they can use that influence to push back on Twitter. And it becomes, like, for example, when Trump was suspended, international news immediately. So this becomes a huge problem for Twitter and any other social media platform to try to deal with that. And they sort of enter this sort of rarefied air where they can kind of they're sort of untouchable by the platforms without there being backfire on the platforms themselves. So hopefully that answers your question in some way.
Well, that answers half of the question, which is on the recipient's end, right? And so for a tweet that is otherwise the same today as it was yesterday, yesterday's really took off and had great penetration. Today's tweet doesn't go anywhere. Is it just because yesterday's hit that celebrity, hit that politician, and cascaded into their networks, whereas today's just didn't have that? Or was there something about yesterday's tweet that made it particularly, that gave it higher octane than today's tweet? And from your database, it sounds like since you've got that content, as opposed to having been able to measure the individual differences of the recipients, you've got the content of the tweets themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's hard to say. I don't think that I know of anybody who's looking at the specific content of the tweet. My gut instinct is that things that are more sort of sensational probably are going to get picked up more. There's also going to be, I would imagine some sort of interaction with like how many people are active in the network, right? So I have some number of friends, and maybe at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, all of them are online. So if I tweet something, it's more likely to get spread. But if I tweet it at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's less likely. So I imagine there's going to be some kind of interaction between the network as well as the content. But I don't think I have a great sort of robust answer for you right now. Unfortunately, maybe Kaicheng has other thoughts on that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we don't in our group we don't really look into that, but that's definitely a really good question to address. It's just not our expertise right now.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions, or can we move? Oh, there is one more question. Michael, if you wanna, and then we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, thanks for a great talk. So I had two questions that are kind of interrelated. So one is about the location system that you're using. So my understanding is you're geolocating accounts based on information in their profiles and other factors. But obviously misinformation spreads pretty widely, and particularly if these people are some of these larger verified accounts, a lot of their followers might not necessarily be in the same location that they are. And in fact, even like a majority might be in a different location. So I'm wondering like how you account for those kind of issues, or if you've ever looked at the geolocation of followers of these accounts that are spreading misinformation rather than the geolocation of the users themselves.
Right. Yeah. Good question. And you have it accurately. The geolocate. So where we place users is based off of their reporting in their profile. However, the sort of verified analysis I'm talking about, so there's sort of two different ways to look at this. The correlations that we're looking at only users who have verified. So it's both the person sharing as well as the person reaching. Everybody in that analysis has been located based off of their self-report. And then with the verified users analysis, we're not looking at sort of the geographical breakdown, so we don't have to worry about that. We just look at everybody in the data set. Does that clarify things?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Cool.
Was there a second question, Michael? You said two.
Yeah, well, my related question is whether you think there's a systematic difference between accounts that can be easily geo-verified versus ones that might be more difficult.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know of any specific research that looks exactly that, but I'm sure that there's probably some bias. I think our hope is that with such a big data set, I think I forget how many, some number of millions of users that we have. So we're hoping that with such a large data set that we expect it to be a little bit noisy and probably a little bit biased, but hopefully we're still picking up some sort of reliable signal there. But it is a limitation that we call out in the paper, because we can't, it's a relatively small proportion compared to like the entire set of users that we have in our data set, but it's still quite large. So hopefully we'll get some good signal there.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Shall we move to the next one, to the next tool? Is that Botometer?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my slide? Okay. Hi, everyone. Very glad we have this opportunity to demonstrate our tool today. So I'm going to introduce our tool Botometer, but before that, a little bit introduction for myself. My name is Kaicheng Yang. You can also call me Kevin. Like Matt, I'm a PhD candidate here at Indiana University at the Observatory on Social Media, working with Phil. And for my research, actually for my dissertation, one thing I do is for the bot detection, which is actually Botometer, which I will introduce more later. And also I'm really interested in the misinformation problem, especially in the COVID-19 pandemic context. But today I will focus on the bot stuff. So let me start. So Botometer is a tool, right? And it's actually one of the tools that we built at Observatory on social media here. I remember earlier there was a question raised about how can we, face such a chaotic situation on social media, which is, there are different malicious actors and misinformation going around. How, as a user, can we do more, right? I think the reason we're building those tools, including Botometer, is that we hope that those tools can empower other people, both the researchers and also everyday users, to give them something that they can use in their daily life to fight against those, let's say, misinformation, let's see, the malicious actors, because sometimes for us, when we are, we have more experiences working on this, we are sometimes, we receive more education, so maybe we can better identify the bad stuff online, but for some other people, maybe they're not so lucky. So if they can have a tool to help them do something to some extent, maybe it will make their life better. And also, hopefully, eventually, we will make the online discussion platform a better place. So that's kind of the reason we're building this, all those kind of tools. So what's Botometer, right? So Phil actually gave you a little bit introduction already. So, but simply put, it's a machine learning based bot detection tool. And also, you probably have some impressions of what social bots are, but still, I'm going to try to put a face on them. So here I'm showing you a group of social bots that I found online. It's actually from another Twitter user, but I sort of borrowed them. As you can see here, all those accounts, it seems that they have different pictures, the profile pictures, and their names are different. But if you look at their bio information, you'll see they are the same, right? Similar bio. And also, they joined September 2021, and also they have some following over hundreds other accounts, but most of them don't have any followers. So we believe, I don't know for sure because I'm not the creator, but based on what I see here, I think this is a group of bot accounts created by someone trying to do something. However, I'm not pretty sure what they're trying to do, but this is a kind of a typical social bots you will see online. However, I do want to mention that there are different kinds of bots. They came in different shapes, different types, different behaviors. This is just an example, but hopefully it will give you a better idea of what we're talking about here. So the problem with those accounts, like Phil said, is one person can control like 9 here or 10 or 100 or even 1,000 and do something coordinatedly. So we don't want that to happen because that really manipulates the information flow on Twitter. So it's really important for us to have the ability to identify those accounts, right? Based on my experience, if you train someone, right, you show them a bunch of bot-like account and human-like account and tell them where to look, human can be really good at identify those bot accounts. However, when we are, especially for us doing research, right, we have to deal with millions of accounts. You just cannot have someone check those accounts one by one. So we need a automatic method to do that, and that's why we create a Botometer, the tool that can help us do this. And we treat this bot detection problem as a supervised machine learning problem. And to do that, the first thing we need to do is to create a training data set. So basically, we need to find some sample of bot accounts and the human accounts. So here is a list of the data set that we gathered over the years. Some of them are labeled by ourselves. Some of them we gather from other researchers in the field. But at the end of the day, we have a group of bot accounts and human accounts. And then we try to learn what kind of characteristics the bot accounts have and what the human accounts have, and see if we can distinguish them. And to give you a sense of how it works, here I'm showing you some of the characteristics or features that Botometer looks. For example, in the picture, it's a screenshot of my account, but basically for any account, Botometer will try to see if there is a default background, if the screen name is suspicious, because sometimes you will see a lot of numbers, random strings, random numbers in the screen name. That's a sign. And also, for example, the length of the description and also the number of friends and followers. So those are just some examples. And also, Botometer also look at the content, the temporal patterns, activities, and the social network. So in total, Botometer will check over 1,000 features or characteristics of an account and try to make the decision. So those are just some examples. And then, we know what kind of features we're looking at. We can extract all those features from our training data set and represent those features in numbers so that the machine can understand, right? And then we can simply put those features together with the labels of whether they're bot or human into a random forest classifier. And the classifier can learn the differences between the bot accounts and the human accounts. And after training those classifier, then if we have some new accounts coming in that we want to check, we will do the same feature extraction procedure and then feed the feature into the classifier. And the classifier will tell us whether this account shows some characteristics of bot accounts or whether it's more like a human accounts, and generate something we call a bot score. It's a score between 0 to 1, and the higher score means the account is more bot-like. So that's how, in a high level, how Botometer works. And then we don't want this to be just to be a proof of concept or a tool in the lab, right? We want it to be useful, to be something people can use. So we build a whole system for that. So here I'm showing you the architecture of our Botometer system. So we have a server that hosts our machine learning models, and we have a API interface and the web interface. The web interface is for everybody to use to quickly check the accounts they are interested in. And for the API, we hope that researchers can check account in bulk to facilitate their analysis. And also with Botometer, we can support other system of ours, for example, Hoaxy, which will be introduced by Chris later. And so that's kind of the system. And today I'm going to focus on the web interface and the API interface. And I'm going to do a demo to show you how those things works and how you can use them if you want to try those in your research. So now let me try to do the demonstration. So first, let me show you the web interface. So this is the link, and it's really easy to find this web page. You can, for example, you can Google search Botometer, and it should be the first result. And also you can go to our observatory on social media website, and we have a page for tools. As I described earlier, we have a bunch of tools, and Botometer is there. You can click this and go to the web page. So this is how you use Botometer. So to use this, you first need to have a Twitter account, because in order to check other Twitter account, we need to fetch some data about those accounts, right? And in order to do that, we have to log in Twitter. So here I'm gonna log in because I already have the cookie cached, so you can see I'm logged in. But if you use this for the first time, you're probably gonna need to type in your account and password. Now you're good to go. You can check whatever accounts you're interested in. For example, I'm gonna use myself as the example. So this is my screen name. Check myself. Hopefully, I'm not a bot. Oh, okay, something. Sorry. Let me see. I promise it works just now. Ah, okay, it works now. So you can see it gave you the results. What it does is after you click the check user button, it will send some queries to Twitter API and fetch my profile, fetch the 200 most recent tweets from Twitter, and then send those information to our Botometer system. And so we can, do the feature extraction and run the classifier and then produce a score. And this is the result you see. And you can see I have a score 0.2 out of 5, which suggests I'm very human-like. And, I can assure you that's true. And the nice thing about Botometer is that you can actually click the result and see more information, basically. So our system not only give you overall score, it actually give you several different type of bot score. So basically, in our definition, there are different type of bots. For example, the echo chamber is the kind of bots we found online that they form a dense echo chamber and posting information with same type of information within the group. And we also have fake followers. Those are the accounts you can buy from some companies. So you pay the money, they will have a bunch of accounts follow you. That's all those accounts do, nothing else. And some other things. And also declared bots. So basically, if my account, it looks like some of those type of bots, the score will be really high, but you don't see any of them. So it's a consistent story. So there are other things you can do with Botometer, right? You can click this and check my profile. And also you can, for example, click the details to see some more information about this account. You can see a summarize, for example, how many tweets I have, how many people I'm following, how many followers, things like that. And I think the most interesting are those two figures, which are the temporal patterns of my activities. You can see over the week, I don't post a lot during the weekend, just during the weekdays, and also in each day, you can see I clearly, I'm sleeping in this time period of time, but in the morning and afternoon, I'm more active. So there are other things you can do. For example, I can check my followers. I can click this and it will go through the list of my followers and check their bot scores. However, you can see it takes some time, so you cannot do this for large scale analysis, but we do offer this because some people hope to see, whether they are followed by bots or whether they are following bots, right? You can also check the friends, and here you can actually, if you don't like this account, you can block it here, right here. That's how we hope that we can empower people to, be aware of what's going on with their social media account and maybe do something more. So now I do want to show you another example of bot account. So this account is a self-declared bot. It means it sells. It says in the description that it's a bot, right? And you can see if you check the bot score, it's really high. It says there's a lot of automation going on here. And if you click the result, you can see the self-declared class, the type score is really high, and also others. So the others is like, we have some bots in our training data that we don't really know how to classify them, but it looks like this account also shows characteristics in that category. And also, I really want to show you the details of the account, this account, and you can see, especially for the temporal patterns. First of all, this account doesn't tweet on Wednesday and Thursday, right? And also, this account doesn't sleep. So that's a clear sign of automation. So it's a really good example of that to show how Botometer works. But I do want to emphasize that this is just one type of bot. There are all other different kinds of bots that maybe, in the temporal pattern, it looks like a real human, but in some other dimensions, other characteristics, it's suspicious. But I won't be able to show you that here. So that's basically the web interface. Everybody with a Twitter account can use it for free. And we have, I think we have over 800 users every day on this website. So it's pretty popular. And I do think it helps a lot of people. But however, for us researchers, this is not enough, right? We cannot just analyze one or two accounts. We have to deal with thousands or tens of thousands of accounts. That's why we also provide the API interface so that people can check accounts in bulk. And in order to use that, you can click the API tab here, and it have links. You can go to the, so we host our API on a website called Rapid API. So they basically handle some of the, for example, subscription and some facility, just do some of the dirty work for us so that we can focus on doing research. But so basically, if anybody wants to use the API, they have to go to here to register the Rapid API, have an account, and then subscribe to our API. For example, you can click the pricing here. You can choose, we have some free plans, but also if you want to check a lot of accounts, you do have to pay some money because, we have to pay the bills for our server, right? But it has free tiers, and you can just choose a plan and do that. So I won't go into the details of how this thing works, but I do want to give you a quick demo of how this thing works. So basically, in order to use the API, you have to have a Twitter developer account. So you have to apply that for on Twitter, and also you have to have a Rapid API account, and you have to subscribe to one of the plans. And once you have those things, you can use our API. And here I'm showing you a Jupyter notebook. So it's like an interactive Python environment. You can run Python codes, and we recommend use Python to interact with the API. And so here I have a notebook. It's really simple. So we have, in addition to the API, we also have a Python library to help you interact with this API. And you can simply install this package by pip install Botometer, and that's it. And then you just import this. And as I mentioned, you do need to load the developer keys from Twitter and also the Rapid API key. And here I'm putting it into a JSON file. So this is my keys. I couldn't show you here, but I can show you the template. So it looks like this. You just put the information here, and this script will load them like this, and then you just run this line of code, and then you can check account. Again, I'm gonna check myself. Sorry, let me run this from the start. So it's similar to the website actually, but here, it's not like fancy interface. They give you a JSON with all the detailed data here, and you can see from here you can write your own script to do whatever you want to do, right? So that's kind of the demo for the API. So another thing I do want to mention, I hope we have enough time. So I want to quickly go through something we called Botometer 101. So we just realized that a lot of our users are not from, like, let's say, computer science background. They're from sociology, they're from communication. They don't really have a lot of experience in programming. So even though we believe we have made, the whole API querying process really easy, it still, has some barriers for them. So that's why we built this repository. So basically, we provide a case study, and so we'll try to analyze, try to find several hashtags on Twitter and see which hashtag is more amplified by bot-like accounts. So that's the research question, and we provide some example scripts so that they can run this and replicate the result, and then modify the script to do their own thing. So I won't go into the detail, but if you want to try Botometer in your research, this is where I would suggest you start with. You can use this to see how when we are doing analysis, how we're going to use Botometer. Hopefully, it can be really helpful. So that's the demo. Let me quickly go back to my slide, and so that was a demo. And also, I do want to show you that this thing works, right? For example, this is an example of we use Botometer together with Hoaxy. Chris will introduce Hoaxy later. Together with Hoaxy, we found some botnet in action. So here we have a bunch of bot accounts trying to pushing a video attacking Bill Browder. So, however, Twitter quickly removed those accounts. So it also kind of suggests we are doing we were correct, but also sometimes it's kind of hard to identify those kind of operations because Twitter has been really strict these days. And also, our tool has been really, I think, has been really helping the research community. We have, I think, we have hundreds of projects, I believe, that were using Botometer, and also including some of the very influential studies about misinformation and some other topics in the past few years. So we are really proud of this project, and we're really happy that people find it useful. So that's it. And so I want to stop here, which are some of the links to the resources for you to start with. Yeah, that's all I want to share today. Thank you for your attention, and I think I can take some questions if we still have time.
Thank you, Kevin. We're running a little bit late on schedule, so I think I'm gonna ask everyone who has questions to enter them in the chat, so we can continue with Chris to at least get the third tool in the recording, because I know a lot of people had to go to class, different meetings, and they will be watching this to get informed. And then at the very end, if you all have a little bit more time, we can address those questions as well. Thank you. Chris, do you want to take on from now?
All right. Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be here with all of you. My name is Chris Torres. I'm a PhD student here in Phil's lab, and I work closely with the observatory. Well, if you're a regular user of Twitter, you are used to searching some hashtag, and you can see that there are all these popular tweets that have been posted, and many of them have many likes, retweets, and replies. But that's pretty much all you can see about them. Well, you could click on them and have an idea of what is happening, but what you are seeing are basically the trees. You're missing the forest. And that is something that our next tool, Hoaxy, helps you visualize. So Hoaxy is available on this website, and it has two modes. The first one is live search, which allows you to look some content on Twitter, and it generates a graph. So let me show an example. Let's say Ukraine. Right now, the tool is going into Twitter. It's fetching tweets related to Ukraine, hashtag Ukraine, and it generates these plots. So now we can see how information is spreading. Here we have every node represents an account, and the edges between the nodes represent some kind of interaction. This could be retweets or replies. If you press over the node, it will bring up this pop-up, and it will show you that this account was retweeted by this other account, and you can right-click and just see the tweet that generated this interaction. Another important part is that it also shows you the bot scores. So on the right panel here, we have the more human-like accounts as being blue, and the red ones as being more bot-like. You can always click here to update the bot scores. We have a database of bot scores where to make the tool faster, we just fetch them from there. Some of them might be all bot scores, so you might want to refresh them to get an idea of how the account looks nowadays. On the left panel, we have a timeline, so you can see at some point in time how many tweets we had with Ukraine. And given that this is a popular topic right now, most of them are, well, all of them are from today. Right now, this tool is limited to around 1,000 accounts, and there is some filtering to make sure that we remove accounts that are not interacting with anyone. There's also the feature where you can see how the information visualizes, and so here you can see how it's moving, and there are some nodes that are grayed out. On some other topic, you might have a more dynamic graph where you can see how it populates the network. And if you find something that is interesting, given that this data is ever changing because we are using the Twitter search API, which only gives you the last 7 days of data, you can press on either of these buttons and just download your results, so you can reproduce the visualization that you had in the future. So yeah, that is one of the first modes. Also, it's important to know that here we can use search operators. So for example, if we want to find hashtags that contain Ukraine, and that also have some sort of media, so a video or an image, you can also do that, and it will just show those tweets. So yeah, now there are fewer, but yeah, look at these bot-like clusters. The Watchman, yeah, NFT. So there's an account that is tweeting about NFTs using the Ukraine hashtag. Yeah, that if you look at this account, it has nothing to do with Ukraine. They are just promoting their cryptocurrency NFTs to get you to buy them and probably scam you out of your money. So yeah, that's one of the functionalities of Hoaxy. Here's the example. So if I downloaded the data, and this is for the example that Kevin just showed regarding Bill Browder, we can just upload it and visualize it. And yeah, here you can see how the information diffuses on the network over time. You see there's barely anyone interacting with Bill Browder, and suddenly there's this spike of bots that comes up, and then they start spamming and mentioning Bill Browder. And this is the tweet, the content that they were spamming him with. This is a video of a Russian lawyer that was in the Trump Tower, and there was this huge outrage during the previous administration. Basically, they were just trying to impugn Bill Browder's character. And as Kevin said, eventually these accounts were suspended very quickly after we found them. The other mode that we have is that since 2016, we have been streaming content, tweets that contain links to low credibility websites and to fact-checking websites. This list is not extensive because these low credibility websites continue changing as people identify them, and we have limits on the amount of tweets that we can stream. But yeah, we have this database of low credibility and fact checks that you can access. So if I'm not going to show exactly how it's working. So yeah, so if you go to Hoaxy, you can come to dashboard here, and it will bring up all these articles, the most popular article that we have. Here we have the claims, and on this other column we have the fact checks. And you can press on them and it will generate a Hoaxy graph. Right now, the database is very slow. So I'm not gonna do this on real time, but here's an example. On the nodes that have the yellow edges, these are tweets that are associated with a fact check. And then the tweets that are on gray are tweets that are associated with some claim that someone is making. And here on the plot, now we have two lines. So one for when the fact checks were created and one for when the claims were created. And we can visualize multiple articles. So yeah, there's all these lists. You can just select some of them or all of them and then press visualize. Now this is going to take a bit of time because the data, as I said, the database is a bit slow, but yeah, you get the idea. So next time that you are on social media and you see those visualizations, such as on these tweets, now you can know that these are all from Hoaxy, and these are all, at least these two tweets that I'm showing are by disinformation researchers. So yeah, it's really exciting to log in on Twitter randomly and just seeing these tweets come up. So it just tells us that the work that we are producing is valuable. And now I want to piggyback some few minutes from Hoaxy. As I mentioned, Hoaxy has some limitations, which is that the data that we are presenting is either from the last 7 days, if we are using the Twitter live search, or they are from the sources that we are tracking. and the sources that we're tracking are not exhaustive. So for that, we have the network visualization tool. This is a database that we have. We get 10% of all the tweets that are posted to Twitter every day. We save them into our local database, and right now, during the past 3 years, we have more than 20 billion tweets. So here we can do something similar, but to Hoaxy, but on a much bigger scale. Here we do not have bot scores, but we have way more data. So right now I'm fetching all the tweets associated with Ukraine, all the tweets from this 10% that were retweets or quotes. They should come up at any minute. So yeah, this you can imagine that this is going to be very big network. Maybe I should have chosen a smaller hashtag, less popular one. Yeah, here it is. So yeah, here we have 18,000 accounts that had 42,000 interactions. Now the network is very dense, so that makes it hard to see what is going on, but we can make the node smaller. You can see how there are some communities. So on here we have this community in orange where all the accounts were interacting between them. And if we select node from here, it will pull up the tweets that were associated with that account. So Adam Miroslav retweeted G. Basov. And these are all the tweets that where they interacted. And yeah, you can change some parameters, some settings, and yeah, it's basically the same thing as Hoaxy, but on a much bigger scale. And yeah, it allows you to filter based on different interactions. So does anyone has any questions?
This is a new 3D layout that was developed by the at our Network Science Institute. Very cool.
Thanks, Chris. I found this message that query time spent cannot exceed 30.
It is very cool. I wonder, so just to confirm, this is 10%, this is drawing on 10% of a given data on a given day with a specific hashtag?
Yes.
Right.
Thanks,
This
Chris.
query was based on 1 week.
Is there any way we can extend the query time spent? Instead of, a pop-up message appears to me and it says query time spent cannot exceed 30 days.
Oh yeah, so if you try to query here, the period that you can query cannot exceed some period of time. So yeah, probably it's a month. But it also allows you to go back in time, like look at last year, which is something that you cannot do using the Twitter search API on Hoaxy.
The 30-day limit is because otherwise the network becomes so large that it just takes too long to fetch the data and visualize it.
Excellent. Thank you.
There is also a question in the chat by Miriam. I can read it, Chris, unless you can get to it directly.
Oh, I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, well, it's on Hoaxy, it'd be possible to look some specific accounts. You will have to write the correct query. So for example, if you want to visualize my tweets, you can probably do this. So from my account and then bring up my tweets. And we can probably just mix this. No, this did not work. So yeah, there's probably some combination of search operators that you can use to search for multiple accounts, but I cannot remember it right off the top of my head right now. But yeah, it's possible.
I think by default is and, you have to say or.
Topic, yes, there's a way to filter on topic, but this is just Twitter has this documentation for how to use these advanced search operators that you can look up, or I can look them up and send you a link if you send me an email. And yeah, you can just filter, let's say, if you want only tweets that have hashtags or that mention a specific word or whatever. They have all these very powerful operators. So yeah, it's just Google.
The question also asked if it's only Twitter. Yeah, for now, these tools are all based only on Twitter because that's the platform that makes data most easily available.
Oh, great, this is fantastic, thank you. We have, amazingly, we made it within the time. I was not sure, but we actually have 2 minutes left. So if there is a final question, this is the time to ask it. All right. Well, I do have a question. I'm just afraid to ask it still because it may take a little bit of time. So I can send it to you via email as well, unless you're
Go for it.
I'm fascinated with the work that you've done with the bots, following just one news source and then getting into an echo chamber. And I was wondering, and maybe that was in the design and I missed it. Can you counter a source? So what if they follow two sources? Would you be able to maintain that diversity in their followers and everything, or is that gonna still get them into an echo chamber?
So initially, we only initialize them with one source, and then after that we don't do anything else. So after that they can do anything. So yes, they can definitely end up following multiple sources. Like there was one example that I mentioned where one of those bots started following, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, and then after a while it started following CNN.
Right.
So, and then in fact it got more diverse. In fact, actually, no, that one didn't even get very diverse. It kind of swapped to the left. But there was another example where one of those bots kind of ended up in having like being in two different communities. So yeah, anything can happen. This is all very random by design. So despite that randomness, we were able to detect a signal of a shift towards the right, both in the content that these bots are exposed to, and also in the content that they produce, which often is just copying and pasting from accounts that they follow, or just retweeting accounts that they follow. So, but there is a lot of randomness in this experiment. Ideally, we would have liked to run it instead of with 15 bots, with 100. But then we run into ethical issues because some of these bots may end up doing bad stuff, like they might retweet misinformation, for example. And so when we were designing the the experiment, we tried to trade off like enough so that we could hopefully get some statistically meaningful signals, but at the same time, keep the number as small as possible. That's why we ended up with what we have. But yeah, anything can happen after that after the first action. And I think your question goes into the direction of like, okay, could we use this to explore like interventions or, you know, and that's very important question, which we haven't explored yet. Certainly with this experiment, which was very, very limited for those ethical reasons. But in theory, it would be great to be able to explore those kinds of things that you're bringing up, like what happens if you change, what happens if you increase the diversity, then would they be exposed to less misinformation? Those are really great questions that you're pointing at.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You have given us a lot to think about and further study. We did pull a few of the papers and we read in the lab, but we will probably be reaching out for more after this demo and the presentation. So thanks again. And it's good
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.